Hi, and welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where just previous to this, I took a swig of margarita. We talk about frying pans and husbands and the times that those two intersect. Make of that what you will.
And Girl
I
Scout cookies.
and
I feel
Girl
like you
Scout
need
cookies. That is the well-rounded, bringing it all the way back to. If you thought this was a podcast that used scripts to discuss their history stories, boy, we have heartbreaking news for you. So sorry about your luck. I'm Theresa.
I'm Angie.
We have no scripts, but each week we do come together and tell each other delightful tales about history that the other one has likely never heard or researched in the depth that the other one has. So that
In
is what we're
lots of
bringing.
notes. We bring
Tons of,
so many notes.
honestly, it's disgusting how often we go to the Library of Congress.
Hmm.
The only part of Congress we really have faith in anymore.
The library part. I mean,
The
that
library
checks,
part.
doesn't it?
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry,
So
Congress.
I mean, these are
I'm not.
things. Are we really sorry? Because I
No.
feel like, we have seen things, we have heard things, we have been through things. Um, this week, it's going to be purely me just spouting off the inane crap that I have found.
I'm so excited.
I know I kind of went overboard with research. This story was inspired by someone that I interacted with on TikTok.
Oh,
Their
cool. Okay.
handle is peanut butter yeeter, like as in to yeet something into the surface of the sun, but yeeter.
Okay.
All
I feel
right.
the same way about peanut butter, my friend.
I enjoy peanut butter, but to yeet it is a very interesting thing.
Do you like just a whole glob of it? Like just
I mean, I just walk around with a palm full of peanut butter and just lick it throughout the day. Is that not how I'm supposed to? So I type one-handed with a palm full, my right palm full of peanut butter.
actually that explains a lot. So just run with it. Live your best life.
Explains why my keyboard is shiny.
Why? That's why I need a new keyboard every 3 months, but
But do you
whatever.
see how moisturized the skin is? That's the peanut butter oil. It's natural. Um, anyhow, my sources, I'll start with that. Battlefields.org. You know what? I'm going to tell you about the Battle of New Orleans. Do you know anything about it?
Very little.
Okay. Um, it is surprisingly a carryover from last week's story when I told you about the pirates of Barataria Bay.
I sincerely believe that is unsurprisingly a carryover from last week's Atari Bay.
Right? Um, okay, so all of that to say, Peanut Butter Yeater and I went back and forth on this because he told me to look up the Battle of New Orleans. I say he, I really don't know. It could be she because Peanut Butter Yeater is gender neutral. So they.
They.
They
Did you
told me
look at
about
their
the
picture?
battle.
Is it just peanut butter?
I mean, it is a blue and red logo looking dealy.
Gotcha. Okay.
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 So it is removed.
Ambiguous all the way through.
Correct. And I didn't go through, clicked all their videos and see if they had videos and see if they're, whatever. I didn't see. I have no idea. Um, we did talk about it.
Sorry.
We did talk about it. And I explained that I wanted to do the Battle of New Orleans, but it mentioned something about pirates and I had to take an immediate detour. And so you got to hear about pirates first. Okay.
There.
So battlefields.org, the Battle of New Orleans, Louisiana State website has an article on the Battle of New Orleans, the Historic New Orleans Connection, the Battle of New Orleans Timeline, History, heritagehistory.com, the Pirates of Barataria Bay, Library of Congress has an article about Andrew Jackson. It's his whole timeline, the War of 1812 and the Indian Wars. Then there's a website called 64 Parishes, and they have an article, the people of free color or free people of color. So
Okay.
basically, Homegirl did a ton of research, got sidetracked with pirates, and ended up giving you that verbal info dump. And then we come in this week for what started me down this rabbit hole.
I am so excited. Like, thank you for doing this story. It'll be much funner to hear it from you than to just read it myself.
Right. So, okay. So let me back up. I mean, I know you know this, but just to set the scene and to kind of reset everything where we are, what we're doing, what we know about life in general, which isn't a whole hell of a lot. New Orleans, previously ruled by France, didn't take it over by Spain, then is French again before becoming American. So there's a lot of ambiguity and switching flags and just generally going, nah, who cares? So no matter who ruled, everybody who lives there is united by the idea of hating the British. That
Fair.
that has been the commonality, right? A tale as old as time. And this was something I had to relearn, that New Orleans was a real melting pot. And it's like I knew that, but I didn't know that. And there's gonna be a couple opportunities where I go, I had to relearn that because my brain, I've never been in New Orleans, I've never been in Louisiana. So I think about things from a very I had school in California kind of view, which pops
Mhm.
up. And so my bias, my lens, they come up from time to time. In New Orleans, we have the Catholic Creoles, the free people of color, Protestant Americans, and all of them hate British people. That's just that is where it is. And we're just a couple decades past the Revolutionary War. So everybody is fresh off of that. Now, a little bit of background. We're going to start in December 1803. And remember, we're going to 1814. That's when the pirates.
Okay.
Okay. The United States and Napoleonic France, they concluded their transfer of Louisiana to the U.S. ownership despite strenuous objections. Great Britain and Spain are arguing that the purchase violates the terms of, the Treaty of San Ildefonso. I don't know, I butchered that. I'm going to edit that out. But either way, Spain and Britain, they're up in arms over this. They're like, you can't know, you got to keep that. I mean, I find that interesting, but either way, Britain was deep in its feels. Between 1803 to 1807, the British Royal Navy is fighting Napoleon. And this is
They're
where we get
busy.
the Napoleonic Wars, right? Which is probably why we were able to buy it anyhow. They needed the cash. They were a bit hard up. So the British Navy is depleting its own numbers. And to bolster the numbers of the Navy, they would use the policy of impressment. Are you familiar with this?
Maybe hit me with it because I might know. I'm thinking I don't know what it is.
That's fair. It's a policy where anyone suspected of being British by birth can forcibly be removed from a foreign vessel and pressed into military service.
Okay. Definitely not what I was thinking.
Okay. The United States really has a hard time with this, and they protest it because many of the unfortunate sailors that are impressed into service are naturalized U.S. citizens, but they were British by birth, so they're ours now. But
What if they were born on the water, like on the way over?
yeah, I don't know. That's
Legal loophole. I found it.
I haven't worried, but see, here's the deal. Chances are, statistically, you are not one of those born on the journey on international waters. Statistically,
They don't know
probably
that.
you know what? They don't know a lot of things, but either way, you think about it, and this is the time to really work on your accent because if they pull over the boat and you go, hang on, get on the boat, come on over here, go swab the deck. We've got go raise the mast or the sail, whatever you got to do. I think the only way you can get out of this is if you start speaking French fluently. You know,
Hmm.
if you look like the country they're going to war with, they might leave your boat alone. But either way, all of this comes to a head. 1807, June 22nd, we have what we call the Chesapeake Incident. Okay, while searching for Royal Navy deserters, the frigate HMS Leopard stops and attempts to board an American frigate, Chesapeake. Eventually, they start firing broadside into her and killing or wounding 21 American seamen. Which is, honestly, if you're trying to get somebody to come work on your ship, maybe not shooting them is preferable. Maybe they get more work done.
I mean, tomato, tomato.
And maybe I'm just being a jerk face and thinking about this from an entirely too capitalistic of a viewpoint.
I mean, like typically when you have all your arms and your appendages and not a gaping hole in your gut, you're more inclined to be useful.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you quit bleeding all over the folded mask, it doesn't unfurl. It unfurls easier. It doesn't get stuck together.
Yo.
I do what I can, right? These are things. Either way, American public, they're pretty pissed off. It's really just kind of a bad day at work when you're searching for the team that abandoned the shift that they're supposed to be supporting you on, and you oopsie poopsie and then cross 21 people off the census. That's
Don't laugh. Try not to laugh.
I
That was a
mean,
great way of wording that.
mm-hmm. So, okay, that's June 22nd. July 2nd of the same year, President Jefferson issues a list of grievances against Great Britain in an attempt to secure American trade rights. This is the first version of what he passes as the Embargo Act, which takes in effect in December of that year. But I'm looking at this sounds like the modern day equivalent of a very tersely worded email / angry Zoom call.
I mean, that checks actually.
It's just a list of grievances. Like, what? Like, I would hope for more from the leader of my country, other than like, I am deeply saddened that you have crossed 29 people off my census. This bothers me greatly. I mean, I want to hear, dear customer service, I am typing this with both middle fingers.
Well, but he's trying the polite tactic first,
I mean, he does go as far as halting all exports to the UK and then puts limits on the imports.
See?
I mean, it doesn't feel harsh enough. And maybe I am too much of a choleric. Maybe I am just too deep in my feels and I just go straight to my villain era.
Good for you. I'm here for it.
I don't know if I live out of my villain era. I don't know if I've ever been outside of my villain era. But the UK responds by saying, well, if you only want some of our stuff, then we're going to refuse to sell you or your friends anything.
Taking our ball and going home.
Basically. So November 11th, the British government issues its Orders of Council of 1807 and cuts off all maritime trade between France, British allies, neutral nations, including the US. Take that.
Ha!
So that happened. And I feel like, I mean, that does seem like a very diplomatic thing to do on how you go through things. It feels weird. But I don't know if I would have been happy with any action. Jefferson's Embargo Act apparently isn't popular because apparently people are used to their standard British fare.
I want my tea.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want. And my arsenic wallpaper, please and thank you.
And my patterns for my fabrics. Thank you so much.
Oh, actually, I don't think arsenic wallpaper was quite there yet. When I think about it, 1809 feels too early. I don't feel like we had the shell green yet. Anyhow, before I get sidetracked about shell green wallpaper, the Embargo Act gets repealed and it's replaced by something called the Non-Intercourse Act, which I'm going to be completely honest. And if I saw that on a multiple choice quiz, I would not guess the correct answer for the Non-Intercourse Act.
It's not what you think it is.
It would not be what I think it is. I would not be in history class when I selected that answer.
Fair.
But the Non-Intercourse Act lifts the costly restrictions on U.S. vessels sailing abroad, except for those bound to French or British ports. So those two guys, still you got to pay the heavy amount. Everybody else, you're cool.
That checks.
So we're now in 1811, 1812. So we're working our way up. Things are starting to get a little bit more tense. Much of history just cycles again and again and again. And we see this with the Speaker of the House, Henry Clay, and Representative John C. Calhoun of South Carolina. They're called the War Hawks in Congress. And these two are openly calling for war against Great Britain as a mean to, quote, assert American sovereignty and regain lost national honor. Basically, they just said, let's make America great again. We've only been around for literally a decade, but let's make America great again.
Yeah.
June 16th, 1812, the British orders in council are repealed, but 2 days later, on June 18th, the United States declares war on Great Britain.
As you do.
So it could be news didn't hit them yet that they were going to reduce things. It could be that America said too little too late. It could be, I don't know. Either way, we're now at war. And the war goes on from June to November because in November, the British Admiralty meet to discuss a diversionary assault to be mounted on New Orleans to reduce the American pressure on the Canadian front. Because again, British owns Canada. They're coming down that
Right.
way. And
Right.
that's where a bulk of 1812 is fought.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. And so for my last story, September of 1814, that's when the Royal Navy captain Nicholas Locklear meets Jean Lafayette or Lafayette, John Lafitte. I did it again, and his men at Grand
Other
Terre.
Frenchmen.
Look, you guys all look the same. Which strangely, you also look like British people. So can we just get thicker accents?
Weird. Could we work this out?
Yeah, like just thicker accents all around. No, I'm joking. I'm gonna scrap all of that. This episode has been brought to you by Everything's Been Deleted.
I was gonna say the delete basket on my computer.
Round file. Okay, so Jean Lafitte and his men in Grand Terre, Louisiana, and meets with the captain. The captain's like, look, we're going to pay you a boatload of money. We're going to forgive your sins against sacking all of our ships. We just want to force you into fighting on our side. Hit them Americans.
Sound good?
Right. I mean, you started out French. You're basically not American, so you might as well. Enemy of my enemy. They've got your brother in jail. You might as well. So Lafitte ends up stalling for time in the best way possible. If you missed last episode, that's where he says he looks at all this paperwork. He goes, "Come on board, come ashore, come off board, come ashore, see what we've got to offer. Come see our humble distractions, and I'll read through your paperwork." And as soon as he's looking through it, he goes, "I'm going to go have a deep think about this." And he walks out of the room. All of his men descend upon this captain and his men, imprison them. And the captain and his men think they're going to get, offed because pirates, not known for being the best hosts. And then the next morning, Lafitte comes and goes, my. I did not sanction all of this out loud directly. Not me. I don't know where my men got this idea. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Great job, Johnny. But hey, I'm going to escort you to your ships with my deepest apologies. And I'm going to need to get my affairs in order. So give me about 2 weeks before I do any assaulting on the Americans. Okay, thanks. I'm going to take your money. Goodbye now. And then as soon as they sail off to the sunset, it's, okay, we got to get a message to the governor of Louisiana about the British attack. We got to play all our cards. And that brings us up to where we're at now. Because I
love knowing pirates were involved in this. Like, it makes me so happy.
This is one of those bits of history that I'm like, I feel like if my teacher had said, but pirates, then I suddenly would have gone, huh? Sorry, I was too busy eating goldfish in the back of the classroom. Can we cycle back through that? We had
Please
pirates.
And thank you. There were pirates? And they had a secret base?
I mean, not so secret. Not so secret, because literally a couple of weeks later, so Governor Claiborne hears attack by the British, as said by pirates, and his response is to send U.S. naval forces under Commandant Daniel Patterson to attack the Baratarian pirates at Grand Terre. And he ends up capturing only 80 men and 26 vessels. Only, which means a lot of them jumped ship and swam off. But these are things. And that's where I read just that section. I went, well, hold up, pirates? And then I was like, I had a lot to learn. And so that's when Britain starts consolidating a lot of its power in the Caribbean, right? Okay, so thank you for coming with me for 2 pages of notes, because here's where we get into some fun stuff. Britain sent for the Battle of New Orleans numbers are ambiguous. So they range from 11,000 to 14,450 troops.
Okay.
Okay. And they send them under the command of Major General Edward Pakenham to fight the Louisiana campaign. Now, some places, very pro-British, will say that these included Army and Navy men fresh from the campaigns fought against Napoleon in Europe, as well as, other veterans of other theaters of the War of 1812.
Okay.
But I'm looking at it like, okay, were they fresh from, or, because we're thinking about, ooh, they've got bloodlust in their eyes, or are they like fucking tired because they've fought for the last
They
several
could use a
months?
nap.
They haven't been home to wash their underwear in their own sink yet, and here we are forcing them into another.
I'm sorry.
It's the
Of
1812s.
all,
Like,
of
they're
all
not.
the
They don't
things,
have. That's what got you. Like, where are
no,
you going to
of
launder your
all
chonies?
of all the things for you to say that they haven't been home to do, washing their underwear is what you come up with.
What do you do when you first get home from a trip?
Oh, I don't know if I just got done fighting a war. I might greet my wife. I
I
might go
just
have a
push her
round at the
out of the
tavern.
way, straight to
Go
the
straight to
utility
the
sink.
sink. Listen, you don't want to greet me yet. I need a
Barbara,
bath.
move aside. I've got things to do.
Come on, Martha. Get out of the way. Martha's just
Come
trying
on,
to introduce you
Irene.
to her next
Oh,
son.
yeah.
You know,
The one that was
whatever.
conveniently born 9 months ago and you've been gone for much longer.
Yeah,
I mean,
drama. Anyway, carry on. Wash your chonies.
so either way, nearly 15,000 troops come. And one of the people leading them is this dude named Vice Admiral Alexander Cochrane, who is in charge of the British Navy in American waters. So this is a ton of people, and America looks like it's about to get walloped. Of these people that are brought over, this was just neat to me. They had the 1st and the 5th West India regiments that were among the British forces that made up of about 1,000 Black soldiers from Jamaica, Barbados, and the Bahamas.
That's pretty cool.
Isn't that neat? I feel like we don't, when we talk about Black history, we kind of skip a lot of the
Parts where they
things.
super helped in wars.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
pick a war, any war, we whitewash it.
Mm-hmm.
So to hear that, I was like, oh, wow, look at you guys. And then some of the units that made up the British service were recruited and trained American slaves who had escaped to British lines, and they were attracted by the promise of freedom. So very much like the Baratarian pirates, where it's like, come on, join us and we will give you what you want. It's very much like the Goblin King going, I will give you what you ask. All I ask is,
I
I
was
obviously need to
thinking,
watch
come
that
to the
one.
dark side, we have pie, but whatever.
Goblin King is much cooler. I mean,
I
when in
mean,
doubt, David Bowie.
I mean, yeah, you're not
And
wrong.
leggings.
Let's talk about the hair. I mean, it's the hair.
It was the hair. So the U.S. forces at the time, they're much smaller. So again, up to nearly 15,000. The U.S. is bringing 3,500 to maybe 500 or 3,500 to 5,000.
And we're working against potentially 14,000?
14,450.
I was gonna say almost 15,000, but that didn't seem fair.
It literally is almost 15,000.
All right, so we're hugely outnumbered.
Yeah. Is that going to be a problem?
Not for the Americans. Are you kidding me?
I mean, look, anytime we have forces this lopsided, it's one of those games of roll them dice, because it doesn't work out well. Not in Risk, not in War. No, you're rolling nat twos on this.
Roll for initiative.
Yeah. So the detachment for the U.S. is composed mainly of Army troops from Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Louisiana militias. The Baratarian pirates, go team, Choctaw warriors, and free Black soldiers. To which I went, what? What? Free Black soldiers? And I ended up being like, okay, Hubs, I need to talk this through with you. Free Black soldiers. He goes, Okay, wait a minute. You started this by telling me Louisiana, and Louisiana had all of these other powers, not American, and there were free people there, free people of color. You started by saying that, and I went, oh yeah, didn't I? And so I had to go off on a couple of merry tangents to talk or to learn about free people of color in Louisiana during this time because it just my biases clicked in. I was like, wait a minute, we're in the South. The South has its
The
own
Tian
playbook.
laws.
There we go. Now, okay, so everything comes
Hmm.
together. History overlaps.
God, I love history.
Hmm. So again, just to circle back, Great Britain up to 14,450 troops, US up to 5,000 troops. But I also didn't say the person leading the American troops, you may have heard of him, Major General Andrew Jackson.
Sorry. I genuinely wanted you to say Lafayette.
He was a
But
bit
Jackson
busy.
works.
He was a
It's a
bit
little
busy.
busy. It was, yeah, it was a little bit occupied at the
Mm.
time.
Yeah, they were already at war with Britain.
Excuse me.
So Jackson's okay, and can I just repeat again that when Jackson and Jean Lafitte meet, they meet at a freaking absinthe house, which is just mind blowing to me.
I
Like,
mean, it checks for the story when you think about how wild everything else is. Absinthe House just makes sense.
and when you like learn that Jackson had a parrot who swore profusely at his own funeral, like,
I love that for us.
I mean, I hate a lot about Jackson. I really, really do. But he did have some redeeming qualities, the parrot being one of them.
I was gonna say the parrot topping the chart.
I
And
mean,
and the great hair.
yeah.
Whatever.
Like, okay,
If we're to believe the portraits, anyway.
like we have side tangent. So when you think about parrots that swear and people and parrots, being very long-lived pets and maybe them outliving their owners and zoos not wanting to take in these exotic birds because of the swearing, I really think, now hear me out on this. If your zoo had a beer garden in an aviary and the
I'd
aviary
go.
was full of swearing parrots,
Bank. Take it to the bank.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that would just be brilliant. Just
I'd
a
go,
bunch of
for sure.
macaws swearing profusely as you're chugging ciders,
I'm here for it.
right?
Yeah. Let's do it.
The Oregon Zoo has not returned my email. But anyhow,
Rude.
I have requests. So sorry, that was quite the merry tangent. I will edit that out of the script. I will not.
I was gonna say, please do not, because what if one of our listeners has access to a zoo that can make this happen and you just edit it out?
And we're invited to the grand opening.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I have a new dream. I'm changing the
I've
name of the
got.
podcast.
Oh, what's it gonna be changed to?
Invite me to the swearing birds and the beer party at the zoo.
I mean, that's
It needs to be
equally
workshopped.
unhinged.
It needs to be workshopped. But
It's equally unhinged, but I'm in full support.
okay, so while we're waiting for our invites, Jackson's forces, so they do come from this wider range of people. Now, including in all of these, we have many of these local militias from the various states and areas around. All of them have their own uniforms. Some
Because
of
that's not
them,
going to be confusing later.
and they're all different colors. So I'm
Of
just
course.
imagining this rainbow swath of people that even have like foreign experience. They have military experience from France, from Saint Domingue and Latin America. So there's just this rainbow of colors out on the field. And Jackson's establishing his base of operations in New Orleans in late November 1814. And he's trying to concentrate his efforts on the Mississippi River after discovering that they're about to, attack New Orleans. This makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Um, this all harkens back to our boy Jean Lafitte. Now, the citizens of New Orleans are super suspect of Jackson at first. They form a committee of public safety to protect their interests. They're convinced that Jackson would burn the city rather than surrender it.
I mean, that is a fair statement when you think about how the citizens and members of the leadership wanted to burn New York to the ground rather than surrender it pre-Revolutionary War.
Okay, so this does check because I went like did a deep dive on like has Jackson burned cities before? I mean, was this kind of like a scorched earth campaign? Like how does he have a history of this? Because I don't have high opinions of him. So you tell me that he eats babies for snack and I'm going to believe you.
It's
It's my confirmation bias right there. I mean, he's
yeah.
putting babies on steaks and I'm like, checks.
Yeah, they
It
got
checks. He's crazy Eddie putting babies on spikes. Um But I should also mention that as all this is going down, Jackson's bedridden when he first gets New Orleans, and he has to dictate the attack from his bed because he's got dysentery.
Oh, okay.
Like Oregon Trail,
You
you've
have
died
died
of
of dysentery.
dysentery. Mm-hmm.
I bet he has the t-shirt.
Oh, that would be so. Could you imagine a t-shirt from the 1800s with 8-bit graphics just to be so anachronistic?
Be
It'd,
amazing.
it'd be so vintage soft.
I'd have to own it.
Mm-hmm. So really, the US is looking just shit out of luck.
Yeah, they
Their
are.
leader, they fear, is going to burn the city down, but he's too busy pooping the bed. He's not feeling too
Quite
good.
literally as opposed to figuratively this
Yeah,
time.
literally pooping the bed and meeting with pirates in between bouts in absinthe bars. And they're outnumbered nearly 3-1. So, meanwhile, in Louisiana, um, behind the front lines, we have both white and free Black men, 45 years and older, forming what they called the Home Guards to protect private property and maintain order in New Orleans and the surrounding
That's
towns and
cool.
posts. So,
Okay.
I mean, I like that. I like seeing people come together. I wish we would do it more often. I wish we didn't need to delineate both white and free Black men. I would really appreciate if like the entire community came together, but I feel like we would lose the fact that free Black people helped all together. Meanwhile, slaves and citizens worked together to widen the canals and build the defenses among them. And slaves also fortified military positions, and they fought in several battles of the Louisiana campaign. Women were not excluded from this. Women were making clothing for the troops, flags, and bandages for the militia regiments, while nuns and free women of color nursed the wounded at hospitals and convents.
Get it, ladies.
Yeah, so we have this was something I got excited to read. The 1st and 2nd battalions of the Freemen of Color comprised over 600 men and played an important role in this Louisiana campaign. Just as free Black men had during the colonial period in the service of France and Spain, Louisiana was the first state in the Union to commission a military officer of African descent and passed an act by the Louisiana legislature in 1812 and was the first in the nation to authorize a Black volunteer militia with its Black line officers.
That's awesome.
It is really neat. Now, there was a lot of problems with racism, even in Louisiana, even with these advancements, where they disbanded the Free Black People Militia and then reinstated it. They had limited the amount of property that Black people could inherit during this time in hopes to, keep them down and continue to subjugate them. But it was still exciting to see that at least Louisiana was progressive to this level. It's still extremely limiting, and I would love to see it much further. Love to see it much further today, but I'm going to acknowledge, like, hey, this was a big step. So fighting in Jackson's forces in Louisiana, I'd mentioned the Choctaws. They were lifetime enemies of the pro-British Creek Nation. So it is literally like these battle lines are almost legendary. And they were under the command of a dude named Major Pierre Giant. It's Jugeant. Probably most of those letters aren't pronounced. But this dude is part Choctaw Scout.
Yeah.
And he'd grown up among the Native Americans and spoke various dialects.
Nice. Okay, I like this for us.
Yeah. So, and he's another one of those people that I was like, oh, I really want to do a deep dive on him because he sounds fascinating. So we have the legendary Baratarian pirates who lent assistance to Jackson and the Americans, and primarily in the Battle of New Orleans, they did this in the form of military supplies and artillery power, because of course they have weapons.
I mean, they had to arm themselves in their fortifications to begin with, right?
Yep. So now we arrive to December 1814.
Okay.
So the first Battle of New Orleans launches in December of 1814, and that's when the British capture 5 American gunboats at Lake Bourgin. I should have looked this up. I really should have, because I looked at it and I was like, that's going to trip me up, but it's Borgne. Borgne.
I'm gonna go with that.
Borgne.
Yeah.
Okay, good enough. People from Louisiana, please write in. We need you. So despite the loss, American casualties numbered, okay, the Battle of New Orleans is several battles. Like, it's not just one. So you're going to hear me say a couple of things, but I promise you, stay tuned because the end is epic. Despite the loss, the American casualties numbered fewer than those of the British. It's just like Risk. You roll dice,
Mm-hmm.
even the defender takes a loss. The next major battle was on the night of December 23rd, when the US and British fight on the land of Villiers, adjacent to the plantations below the city. And this ends in a stalemate that threw the British off balance and really battered their morale. Because again, they rolled in with basically 3-1 odds, and they expected to
Okay.
just storm through this whole thing. And they're taking hits. The cost of engagement for this battle is high, with 277 British casualties, including 46 killed. And I don't understand how you can have a casualty and then a killing. So maybe wounded in this regard.
Okay. Yeah, that is a good question.
I mean, but it says the US had 213 casualties, with 26 of them being killed. And the hardest hit was a group called Beale's Rifle Company, which was primarily composed of lawyers and merchants from New Orleans. So this just really
Oh
shows that it
no.
was everybody arm in arm. Because I
Yep.
I get that lawyers are a bunch of bloodthirsty pirates themselves, but to hear that they were the rifle group is just it warms my cold dead heart. So meanwhile, as all of this is happening, the US and British commissioners meet in Ghent, Belgium on December 24th, and they sign a peace treaty that effectively ends the War of 1812. And then the battle is raging on in New Orleans.
Right, because you can't just call over yet.
Right. New phone, who dis? So that's Christmas Eve. They say, okay, we're done. Thanks, boys. And January 8th, because news travels slowly, the Battle of New Orleans is fought between Major General Peckham, and he's killed in battle, and a third of his group is severely wounded. Soldiers describe the battlefield action as confused, haphazard in the dark hours of that foggy morning. Britain suffers over 2,000 casualties in that decisive battle, where Jackson loses 71 men.
That is outrageous in differences. Like, but again, America.
Roll them dice. But you didn't see that happening. And this is like the second time within a month that, or not in a month, because when I covered Musashi Miyamoto, like how he just like, I like, look, this is gonna be a short battle and it's not gonna go it's gonna go poorly, but it's not going how you think it's going. When he's
Yeah,
slaughtering people with a boat oar, and Jackson's losing 71 men to Pakenham's 2 grand. But
that's
the
insane.
the British do an incredible thing. They withdraw and sit out on the water over the Gulf, and they fire at Fort Phillip for over a week before sailing out to sea. Like, if that's not being
Like,
a poor sport, I don't know what is.
I was just gonna say, I'm mad. I don't want to play with you, so I'm gonna sit in my yard and throw rocks at yours.
Pretty much. Pretty much. Meanwhile, the the treaty has been out for weeks and they're still getting angry, screaming obscenities over the fence at the neighbor boys.
That super checks.
So yeah, that crazy inane, bit is the Battle of New Orleans with all of the excitement and like, what the heck did I just hear? And how many people died? And we had pirates and free people of color and massive odds not in our favor. And we kicked them in the teeth despite there being a treaty already in place.
I have like the visual that I have is Jackson handing out those jerseys you wear in practice games to
I mean,
everybody.
it's really like the one football game from high school that I remember was our team was just absolutely hammering the other team to the point where a group of kids took out their car keys and started shaking them and chanting, "Go start the bus. Go start the bus," because the other team didn't even need to be on the field anymore. It was a foregone conclusion.
Like you're done, ski.
Yeah. But like I have to show you this incredible um like really summary of that's on my notes. One of my sources had this beautiful visual for the final battle of New Orleans.
Edward Peckenham is so much more distinguishingly handsome than Jackson. Maybe it's the
Jackson,
lack of slaves he owned.
okay, first off, Peckenham has a chest full of medals, and Jackson yells like he or looks like he just woke up out of a sound sleep with Wheel of Fortune playing in the background to yell at the kids to get off his lawn.
He really, really does. Super does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
That is
just to see the
wild.
pie chart of the forces engaged, and this one says that America had 5,700 to the United Kingdom's 8,000.
Yeah.
But and that could have been towards the end for this final battle, whereas I was thinking of original numbers, which is where I pulled them. But then you look at the casualties, and this one said 62 versus the 71. So there's the different sources are going to have different numbers, right?
Yeah.
Versus the United Kingdom's 2,034.
Well, and I'm sure like I always think about this in relationship to war. I think it's probably really hard to give a really spot on casualty count because yes, you can count your casualties that you know are direct hits,
Right.
but like I feel like oftentimes there's probably a lot that are not accounted for or they died of other reasons and get accounted for.
I mean, and how quickly after battle do you need to die to be counted among the dead of that battle? Like if you've got like look at Henry VIII. He has that wound from
Right, right, right.
the jousting incident that just lingers for years. But if you've got an open wound and you are fighting infection every step of the way and it takes you 3 agonizing months, should you be among the dead for that battle? You wouldn't have died had you not been in it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why it's hard to count for 100% accuracy in any battle.
I mean, if we look at it on a single level, like if you, Angie, just got in a fight with your neighbor, and let's say you got physical through whatever means your little heart got you, maybe frying pan, maybe throwing knives.
Take your pick.
I mean, however you do it. And if they're not dead, you're looking at what, attempted murder? But as soon as they die, your charge gets upgraded. It doesn't matter how long it takes for them to die. It just
I
if
mean,
they die
that's
of that
is
wound.
if they die of, yeah, I was gonna say if they die of that wound. So,
Right.
I mean, does yeah, I guess that has some far-reaching questions. Like if you have the Agent Orange problems and you die 56 years later, do your numbers add to the right? Like,
I mean, I guess it depends on what does your birth certificate, the opposite of that, what does your death certificate say? And,
yeah,
you know, are those numbers accurately getting reported to the powers that record totals?
right. I'd say probably not.
I mean, reporting and data are bad under the best of circumstances.
Right. So I'm assuming war circumstances make them even worse,
A
if
little
I
bit
had to
harder to
guess.
tabulate.
Yeah.
But anyhow, that's the Battle of New Orleans.
I love the visuals you've given me today. I need you to know that the pirate prince, because that's what he is leading this ragtag group of people wearing penny jerseys into battle, and they're all multicolored because Jackson just needed to do so.
So there was one story of Jean Lafitte on the battlefield of New Orleans, and he recognized that I think it was the ramparts, they didn't extend far enough. And he looked at it and just went, we need to build up that area over there because I am a pirate. And if I saw that, I would attack right there. We're fighting against a big navy, and they're going to think like I think. They're going to come over
Mm-hmm.
there. And Jackson kind of went, yeah, all right. And
I'm here for it.
that was a big thing apparently that was credited, a little feather in his cap.
Is what made his plumage much longer.
Right. Where it's like, you know what? Jean Lafitte. He's good peeps.
These are things. For some reason, when you said that he was looking out the ramparts, the first thing that came to my mind is that scene in Lord of the Rings right before Gimli tells Legolas he's going to need him to toss him. Yes, that's the visual I have now. There's elves in the Battle of New Orleans. I don't know if you know, but there are now.
You know what? Honestly, as much of a melting pot as New Orleans was in early
Not
1800s,
surprised.
yeah, I mean, free people of color, Creole Catholics,
Yeah, I'm here for it.
Protestants, the
Oh,
Casquette
Protestants.
girls,
Yeah,
the Casquette girls' descendants were likely there.
they were. And they still are. Crazy
And
thought, huh?
the nails that the Pope blessed for that convent still in the shutters to this day.
That's what they say. Just saying.
I mean, look, I'm here for it. As
Me too.
crazy as it is, and I would love to get my hands on the Pope's diary where I can see,
Oh, I want to
bless
hear
nails, bless
yeah, bless
water,
babies,
bless babies, Jim.
lunch with the cardinals.
Mm.
I just really wanted to be a fly on the wall when the Pope's attendant had to tell him that was what was on the docket for the day. Two
But I did
o'clock.
nails last week.
That was a different monastery.
Ugh.
2 o'clock, Sister Agnes will be in. She's going to need your blessing. And also more holy water. Thank you so
Sister
much.
Mary Loquacious.
It's got a comma. What was that?
I mean,
Apostrophe.
Sister Mary Loquacious was not of the Holy Roman Emperor or Holy Roman Church, Catholic Church.
Whatever.
I'm so far gone at this point. Either way, if you have enjoyed hanging out with us and if you're thinking this has been rip roaring fun, I wonder what the heck they are going to bring up next time. So do we. We haven't picked our stories yet. But if you're like, oh, I need to reach out to them and explain to them how to pronounce that lake so that when they cover the next installment of the Battle of New Orleans that they didn't know was coming because Theresa finally researched that one person that led the Choctaws. I'm here for
I
it.
really hope you do.
You can reach out to us at unhinged.historypod@gmail.com. Rate, review, subscribe, tell your
All the
friends.
things. Please tell your friends.
Honestly, can you info dump this entire podcast on your friends so they never want to listen to us because they feel like that's all you do is talk about us? We're your best friends. Come hang out with us. You don't need other
We
people.
have pie.
We will have pie.
And cookies.
I want to hang out with us now.
I know, me too.
Right? Well, on that note, if you've enjoyed all of this, goodbye.
Bye.